Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen. I'm joined by my usual broadcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw, played 11 seasons for the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. This is the Laidlaw and Allen Report, come to you twice a week to talk all things hockey. And Tom, in golf, after the season's over, they call it the silly season because they play some tournaments. There's nothing silly about what happens in the summer in the NHL. I mean, that's when business gets done.
Right.
And here we are, less than or about 48 hours after the completion of the Stanley Cup final, and we're starting to hear that the Penguins are far apart with Evgeny Malkin. We're hearing that Kevin Fiala may be traded by the Minnesota Wild. The Bruins are, I guess, moving closer to hiring a new coach. There's just a lot happening in the latter stages of June here.
It's interesting, right? When things happen like that, then you think, "Wow, I never even thought that could happen." I remember way back when Wayne Gretzky got traded from Edmonton to the Kings, and I was still playing. And ever since then, the kind of joke is, "Well, listen, Wayne Gretzky got traded, so anything can happen." So the thought of, for me, one of the big ones, the thought of Malkin leaving Pittsburgh there, but he's been a fixture there. They won cups there with him, but again, he is getting older. I'm sure it's interesting when you say silly season, because I think sometimes for hockey, it's still the silly season during the summer because some of the contracts these guys sign, you think to yourself, wow, but I guess that's the price. If you want to get the player, you've got to probably overpay for him. So,
well, you've got to overpay if you're a certain city. Like I don't think, I think Winnipeg and Carolina and some places maybe that aren't, I don't know. Maybe Carolina has joined the better places to play. It's very nice weather there, and it's a nice community. So maybe they want to go there. But certainly Winnipeg is still in that boat. Edmonton, it's cold in those cities.
Yeah, and then you think of the tax differences in a lot of those cities.
Sure.
Like, the higher taxes in Canada, lower taxes in Florida, Texas, no state taxes altogether. So that makes those places more attractive too. So
yeah, no, for sure. But I wanted to get your thoughts. You played for two NHL teams. Looking back on your career, would you have preferred to play your whole career for the Rangers, or did you think that by going to a second team, you sort of got to experience, life in a different way?
No, that's a great question. Well, yeah, I remember when I got traded out of New York, I was really disappointed. I wasn't happy at all. Looking back at it, I had not played well. The first 5 or 6 years of my career were really good. I started getting hurt my back. I lost my confidence. And I didn't know what was going on. It was more like I was a physical player. And with my back being hurt, I felt like I to hit somebody. Probably Luke Robitaille from the Kings.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So when I got traded, I look back at it now, I deserved to get traded. I was not playing well. Phil Esposito, who was fantastic to me when I came into the league, traded me to LA. And I look at it again, I was upset. Now, once I got to LA, you're right, it was a great experience for me. And again, I was very fortunate that Wayne Gretzky got traded there when I was there. So it was great to see another way of doing things. And especially it was really different then because here in New York, a lot of games, like we drove ourselves to the Islanders games. We drove ourselves to the New Jersey Devils, just like it was a home game. There in LA, there was no driving to any games. It was you're getting on a plane for every game and go some long road trips. Great guys, great group of the organization was great. Bruce McNall, I think everybody knows he'd gone to jail, but I still view him as a real builder in the National Hockey League, bringing Wayne Gretzky to LA and building that organization up. It was. Again, as much as I was disappointed to leave the Rangers, it was great to see another way of doing things out in the West Coast.
Yeah. And I think, the Kings are kind of a unique team too. Like that changes, like it's hockey is different in LA than it is in Montreal or Toronto. I don't know any other way to phrase it, but it is, the weather, it's, you come out of an arena in Winnipeg in winter, you're playing in the NHL, but it's a little bit different when the golf course is calling you in LA, and there's a lot to go on.
I remember the first Christmas they were there. It was Christmas Eve, and I'm sitting out in the backyard in the hot tub having a cocktail, and I'm thinking to myself, "Holy smokes, what am I complaining about?" As much as I missed New York, it was. Oh, you're right too. And then when Wayne got there, it really changed too. Even the people that came to the games, it became like the place was all celebrities in our locker room. I've told stories many times about couldn't even move in the locker rooms. All the movie stars were in there, and so yeah, it is a different world. New York was. And it's funny, as much as you travel around to different cities in the league, when I was with the Rangers, I just kind of really only looked at New York. New York was my home. So I really never paid attention to much other stuff. So once you get traded away and then you come back to New York, you realize it's so unique, Madison Square Garden. It's right in the middle of Manhattan. It's on the 5th floor. The Ranger fans are just diehard fans. So I was fortunate to be, two great cities, two different cities, and two great organizations too.
That's the nutty thing about MSG, that a lot of folks, if you're not from New York, you really don't comprehend. But, think about a big building and an ice rink being on the 5th floor. It doesn't feel like that when you're there. Not at all. But, it's just such a unique venue.
It is. It really is. And the history in Madison Square Garden too, even though they've changed it now, they kept the ceiling the same, like that iconic ceiling. So it's like all the concerts and boxing matches and basketball.
It's actually one of
We lost you for a second there, Kev. You're back.
Yeah. I don't know what happened there, but
we've got so much to say today. There's enough bandwidth. So we lost Kevin there for a second. We'll chat away here a little bit. One of the things I want to talk about with Kevin when he gets back is the Hall of Fame committee. They've obviously named the players before, but the players will be going in. So Alfredson, the Sedin twins, Roberto Luongo, the Salonen. I think that's that female Finnish player. She played in the Olympics, I think at 44 years old or something. And then there's Herb Carnegie, player from back in the 40s, I believe it was. So here comes Kevin back on. There he is. You're back.
No matter how old you are or how professional you think you are, you just can't take the knucklehead out of me. Like, I was trying to kill some other files, take them down, thinking maybe that was my problem. And of course, the first one I clicked on was the one that I actually needed to be on. So
you're thorough. What is Kevin? You're thorough.
Yeah, I'm something. There's no doubt about that. But I wanted to talk a little bit about so Malkin. What do you think Malkin to do, by the way? Do you think he'll stay with Pittsburgh, or do you think he's gone?
Well, how old is he again? 35?
35, yeah.
35. So is he going to want a 4 or 5 year deal someplace?
No. I think he would accept 3. I'm sure the Penguins are trying to get him 1 or 2.
Yeah. See, that's going to be the thing, right? It's he's been relatively injury free. He's been hurt, but he's played a lot of games, all right.
But I mean, he's had some pretty significant injuries in the last couple of years. I mean, this knee injury that he had last season was a severe one.
Right.
Certainly.
So who's got the cap space that would want him? Washington.
Washington would be the first one I would look at with Backstrom's history and doubt. A Malkin, Ovechkin, 1-2 scoring punch would certainly create a buzz around the league. I know I would love to watch that.
Sure. Who else then would get the cap space too? So what is he going to want? What, $6, $7, $8 million a year, or what's he?
Well, I would think so. I mean, he still thinks he's playing at a high level, and I think he is. I don't know. I'm sure and I'm just totally guessing here, but you would think the Penguins would have come in like at maybe 3 years at 5, and he's saying, "Oh no, I want 7 plus."
I think part of the thing is, okay, who else would want him, and where would he want to go? Right.
Well, it'd be interesting. I wonder if, for example, Steve Yzerman in Detroit, who needs he's looking for a center. He wants to be competitive. He's still a long way from competing, but he could say to Malkin, "You come in here, you'll play a lot, and you can show our kids, how it's done, and really get it done."
Is he that kind of guy that can show the young kids? Will he go out of his way like Stahl did there in Detroit to show the young kids how it's done? Like I don't know he seems like he's a hard worker. He does take some bad penalties, some selfish penalties. I'm with you. I think you're right with Steve Yzerman. He's he knows how to build hockey teams, and probably a guy like that in the lineup would make a difference. But that's why I think a team like thinking outside the box, like a Vancouver or a team that kind of thinks, okay, we could be in contention here. We need one more piece. That kind of guy. Does Boston, they're going to be missing Bergeron at the start of the season. But does he fit into the Boston way of doing things? That's the interesting thing. All right. So while Kevin's frozen there again, we're going to talk about, I talk about the Hall of Fame selection committee, and write in, please. You want Susan, you're right. Susan's been picking on me nonstop lately, and I'm a sensitive guy. Nice shirt, Tom. Thank you. That's my workout shirt today. I haven't showered yet, so got to go into Costco right after the show. All right, Hall of Fame. Alfredsson, the Sedin twins. Luongo Salonen is a female player from Finland, and then this Herb Carnegie. I think he's a player back in the 40s or 50s. Whatever. I've heard a bunch of stuff about this Herb Carnegie. Like he was a legend. There's a rink named after him in the Toronto area. So apparently he had quite a career and played in a lot of different leagues, from what I understand too. Okay, here's my and please tell me what you think here writing in. Daniel Alfredsson. I'm not seeing him. I was never that much. Everybody else seemed to be jumping on the bandwagon how great he was. And I know he played in Ottawa for a long time, was their captain there for a long time. I just have never really looked at him as that great of a player. I mean, don't be wrong. He is a good player, but I just don't view him as this shoe-in. But obviously he's going in the Hall of Fame, so it doesn't matter what I think. But Kev, I was just talking on, if we want to jump around to something else, I was just starting to talk about the Hall of Fame guys that are getting inducted. I've never been a big Alfredsson fan. I get it. I know he's put up big numbers and all that. I just have never really been like. Yeah,
well, I live in Detroit, as everyone knows, and here everyone's upset that Zetterberg didn't get in and Alfredsson did. But if you look at the level of accomplishment with Alfredsson, in terms of points, he's more than 1,000 points. He won the Clancy Award. He won the Calder Trophy. He won the Mark Messier Leadership Award. Model Citizen. Gold
medal, correct?
I would assume he did. I don't know the answer to. Has been to the Stanley Cup final, but has not won. Curious yesterday, it was only the second time when there was no member of the class who had won a Stanley Cup. Right. And yeah, so that just frosted the Detroit fans even more, because Zetterberg is a member of the Triple Gold Club. There are 30 players who have won World Championships, Olympics, and Stanley Cup, and Zetterberg is among that group. And of course, he won a Clancy as well. He's he's also been he won the Conn Smythe when they won the Cup. So he had a lot of credentials. He didn't play as long because of his back injuries as Alfredsson did. So
see, if you just mentioned those two names, Zetterberg and Alfredsson. Yeah, I just view maybe it's the championships that they won there in Detroit. I just view that Zetterberg had I think of him. I think, wow, that he had a heck of a career. And again, not to be saying that Alfredsson didn't have a good career, but I never.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is, of course, is Alfredsson's only other season that wasn't with Ottawa was in Detroit.
Right. Yeah.
He played pretty well in Detroit. And he's a very likable guy in terms of the intangibles, the character things. Alfredsson rates high, but. So does Zetterberg. But here's the point I would make about the Hall of Fame that I think is lost on everyone. Right. And I'm thinking about this. I'm a selector for the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame. I'm on the committee, and our meeting is coming up. And I was looking at the list of candidates, and we always think when a player retires, his competition is over, but it's not, because you get up to go into Hall of Fame. You're still competing against other athletes to try to get in. Like, it's about timing. Like Alfredsson, this was his 5th time when he was up for the award. This was Zetterberg's first time. Right. So you're still competing against those guys who are trying to get in. And when I looked at this list, it's a large list. We're going to have to sort out who's going to get in. Like, we can, in the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame, we can only put in a certain number of people. And just like in the Hockey Hall of Fame, well, on my head, I'm thinking, well, there might be 8 or 10 or 11 people that are going to get in. Well, they all can't get in this year. So, you got to prioritize who you're going to vote. And that's what happens in the Hockey Hall of Fame. That is the flaw in the system. It's oftentimes it's not about whether they're worthy to go in, but is this the right time to put them in?
Interesting.
Wow. So it's complicated. It's a lot more. I mean, there's certain guys. I was also in the past. I had a tour of duty as in the Hockey Hall of Fame on that committee, and I was on the committee that put Mario Lemieux in, and that was easy. It was a slam dunk. Like you didn't have to talk about that. You just said Mario Lemieux, he's in. So
why a guy like a Glenn Anderson? He so long period of time went by. I hear a lot of stories that people just didn't like him. He was a flawed character, or whatever it was, and all of a sudden he gets in. Does somebody lobby for him? Does somebody have to step up?
Well, yeah, I mean, in any committee, there's always not lobbying as much as you make a case. I always saw when I was on a committee, I was almost like a lawyer. I'd go in, I'd prepare briefs and certain players, and I'd speak my mind on them. And I would, you try to win over the committee, and the stronger committee members do, I think they have more of an impact. Like if you're a good on your feet and can speak, and when there's debating going on, you got to be able to stand up for the players you believe in.
So did that ever get heated or personal, that debate about certain players?
There's been some moments when people weren't happy with one another, for sure. In all the committees, I wouldn't talk about that because it's kind of like a dressing room. You kind of leave it all. But people get riled up a little bit about when it's not going their way. I've lost some battles that I don't understand how I lost.
Really?
So and I'm if you're going to be on a committee for a lengthy period of time, you're going to lose some. Because although it's no different. I always hate it when players or athletes or coaches argue trying to get the next call. But I've done that, in select meeting where I knew I was going to lose, but I wanted to plant a seed. So next year, when I came in with guns blazing, they're going to remember, oh, there goes Kevin again. He's coming after us again, trying to, so you want
to, or else we can't let him get his way all the time.
Something. So it's all, I like to think there's no politics in this, but there is, just in terms of, I support different players or builders or whatever than the person sitting next to me.
Totally. How about the Sedin twins? What do you think of them getting in?
Well, they were certainly worthy. We haven't seen two brothers like that. I mean, it was uncanny, their ability to, and I don't think it was all genetics. Like, they have just played together for so long, they really understood. And I think it's okay to say, if you're on the committee, I mean, this is the way I view it. You tell yourself, are they both worthy? The answer to that is yes. So then why not work to get them to come in together as part of the, that's the way it should be. Like it's okay to be, it's okay to be sentimental, as long as you're not depriving someone by being sentimental. Like, I don't think it doesn't cost anyone anything to allow the Hall of Fame to put these two in together.
So are they required to have a certain number of players or people come in every year, or a certain limit, or is there, what's the numbers on it?
Well, there's a limit, but you got to reach a percentage in order to get them in. I think I forget exactly, but I think it's 3/4 for now for the
But the number of people that are inducted each year, is it?
It's limited to how many. I mean, you can't. Logistically, you can't have 15 people coming in because the speeches would go on until the.
So there's no hard number though that says, okay, we have to have at least 3. We can't have more than 8. That kind of stuff. There's no.
It's more. We can't have more than 5.
Okay. Gotcha. Part of me, I look at this whole list with the Alfredsson, the Twins, the Luongo, the Salonen, the Finnish player I don't know much about, Herb Carnegie played a long time ago. It's particularly the current, like the Alfredsson, the Twins, and Luongo. it's kind of underwhelming to me. Like I'm not sitting there and going, "Oh, these guys are all first ballot Hall of Famers," right? It's kind of like,
Well, I mean, I respect what you're saying on that. It lacks, the big star.
Right.
We don't have a Gretzky, a Messier, an Yzerman. It's missing off that. These are all exceptional players, but
Right.
and see, a lot of people make in these committees that did you win a cup? So
maybe that's what I'm really not saying it out loud. Maybe that's what's going on in my mind. That
and that goes on. There is a lot of discussion about that, but is Marcel Dion not a great player because he didn't win a cup? Is Jeremy Roenick not a great player because he didn't win a cup? Is Bill Gadsby not a great player because he didn't win a cup? There are a lot of unbelievably gifted players who didn't win a cup. And
did Mike Gardner get in? I mentioned him because he now was the head of the election.
Yeah, he's in. He's in the sheer, but Mike got in the sheer magnitude of his goals. Like he was 700 goal scorer, wasn't he? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, didn't he have like 10 or 11 30-goal seasons?
Oh, yeah. I remember one year when Carlson was up for the Norris, Bob McKenzie, who I consider a friend, and I think, Bob knows the game as well as anybody. He wrote a column where he basically said, you want to look at the overall picture of an athlete, particularly in the Norris Trophy. You want him to be good defensively, but at some point, he says, you reach the point when the numbers are so staggering that it doesn't matter what whether he was a great defensive player or not. And that was the year Carlson, which just had incredible numbers. We hadn't seen a guy put up those offensive numbers in a long time. Yeah. And that was Bob's point. This is a weird year. And he was, I can't remember how many points he was ahead, but he was 20 some points better than any other defenseman. And the sheer magnitude of the numbers, well, that often is the case with Gardner. There were people who would say he was not a great playoff performer. And you can make a case that he was not. However, the magnitude of his numbers was staggering. You got to be a good player to score that many goals.
Yeah. And I can tell you, I played against him in the playoffs, and he was the same player in the playoffs that he was in the regular season. He was a great player in the regular season. So it just this is when I haul out. I want to hit people with Ed Belfour. Yeah. Can't win the big one. Can't win the big one. Can't win the big one. Wins the cup. Hall of Famer. Yeah, totally.
I guess he can't win that.
Yeah, you can't win the big one until you win the big one, right? Then once you win the big one, and you really haven't changed.
It's been forgotten, but in Detroit, they blamed Steve Yzerman for the fact that the Red Wings couldn't move in the late 80s. Of course, Edmonton was in their way. They were in the same conference. I couldn't move out, and until they tried to trade him, then the fan base said, "Well, what are you doing trying to trade our Steve?"
Isn't that interesting to think about that? Or a guy like Larry Murphy getting booed out of Toronto, then he goes to Detroit. He won the cup there in Detroit, right?
Yeah. Oh, yes, he did. He won back-to-back cups. But right. And going back to Pittsburgh too, I've said this to Larry, and he's always appreciated it. With all the players that the Penguins had, they had a lot of talent. Of course, they had Mario. But Mario, of course, had the bad back, and I thought the most indispensable player, and that's the exact word I mean, because when Lemieux went down, at least they had a young Yager, and they had a lot of duplication of talents on that skilled team. But Larry was really the only on that first team, the only offensive defenseman that moved the puck like him.
Yeah, so that's true. Now, you think about how do you get booed out of one city, being Toronto, but then have such a great career and win so many cups, right? Because he did. He was a great player, put up big numbers. It just the whole thing about getting booed out of Toronto, I'm like, how does that all start? But I guess that's not a surprise, right? That happens in other buildings too, where people they start booing a player for some reason. They don't know why, and then everybody just keeps on booing them.
Right. Yeah. Well, but Susan, going back to what Susan brought up too, there's a half dozen players that, in my mind, should be in. Like, how could Alexander McGillney? I mean, the guy, risked treason to come over here to play and scored 70-some goals, and it was just a phenomenal player. Like, how could he not be in all?
I know. How about Pavel Bure? Is he in? Is Pavel Bure in?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah, but I did want to bring up. There's a real interesting story that here in Detroit that Oscar Sundquist, who came over from the St. Louis Blues at the trade deadline, a very funny player, a Swedish player, well liked. He came over here and he hit out of the park in terms of the dressing room. Like the guys really appreciated him. And he's a big-bodied player, and Yzerman liked how he played. Right. Now his knee was a mess, and he's had that worked on. Well, he did a podcast recently, and they asked him about coming to Detroit and about Steve Yzerman. And what he said about Steve Yzerman, he said it was terrifying. He said the first time I met him, he just said, he basically said he's just got an intimidating presence. And he said even in the exit interview, he said, it's scary. It was just scary to me to sit there with him, And then he talked about Larkin and just what a great guy he is. But for Bertuzzi, I think he called him a hillbilly, but he's a tremendous amount of fun. And it was a really engaging interview. And even though he probably should have been a little more careful in his word choices, it was positive. Like he loved the Red Wing group in general. But it was so refreshing to hear him be so candid. But I want to, of course, concentrate on the idea that Steve Yzerman was terrifying. And I wondered, did you during your career come across anyone that you thought was intimidating, that you thought, whoa, I gotta mind my P's and Q's here?
Wow. I would say Glenn Sather's in that category. And it's amazing because I think he does it on purpose too. I think he was with a pat. Listen, it goes way back to, I told a story with the Dave Semenko story where I hit Gretzky and then the whistle blew and it's dead quiet in Edmonton. And he gets up on the boards with 1 foot and he yells, "Laidlaw, you're going home in a body bag." And then he sends Semenko out on the ice. So I think that was how he perceived himself, or he wanted me to be perceived. Because then I got to know him later on when he was here at the Rangers. I met with him a couple times, sat and joked around. He's a fantastic guy. He's just like a sweetheart of a guy. But he definitely, even when I was in the agent business and negotiating with him, like he was always trying to be that intimidating guy. So yeah, until you get to know him, I can see where Sather's the guy that I thought was the most intimidating. Yeah.
I can actually see that as a reporter. When you had to dig in your heels a little bit when you interviewed Glenn Sather for the first time until he got to know you, and he would test you. Yeah. Like, he'd come back at you. And I remember Austin Murphy, who covered hockey for the Sports Illustrated, got that job when he was young. And I remember being with Austin and, he was asking Glenn questions. It was me and him and I think someone else. We were just chatting. And, Slats came at him hard. And, you could see Austin's wheels are spinning and trying to figure out what he's doing. And, he's kind of held his ground a little bit. And afterward he goes, "What the hell was that?" And I said, "That was Glenn Sather testing you." And I said, you got to stand up to him when he does that, because, if you collapse, it won't go good for you the rest of the time.
Funny. Well, I remember when I was in the agent business, I was negotiating. I can't remember who was negotiating a contract for me. We had some kind of a deadline, and I'd been traveling, and I was sick, and I was running around. I flew in home, had to go to the office downtown Detroit when I was living out there, and I could barely speak. And he says, "Not feeling too well, are you, Tom?" And it wasn't like he was concerned with my health. He was digging it in. Oh yeah.
No, I could see that, but it is kind of funny to. Steve Yzerman really can be intimidating, just because he's very serious about what he's doing. And I think during this interview, Sundquist said that Steve Yzerman doesn't care what anybody else thinks. He's going to do what he feels is right. Like he says, he's just not concerned about what anybody thinks. Right. And I think that's an accurate assessment. I think Steve does what he thinks is best, and he's confident in his ability, and he moves forward. So
definitely, But it's interesting watching that documentary and how he picked that Cider or whatever, Morris Cider.
Right.
Everybody else was saying, "No, don't take him." Everybody was shocked and kind of said, "Stupid pick." You look at him now. I hope.
Well, Steve, the first round belongs to Steve. I mean, that's the way I tell the story, that, you know, he pays attention. He knows what's going on. Like last year, Kosa and Edmondson, those are Steve Yzerman picks. You know, he makes decisions. Then he turns the draft over to the scouts who are out in the vineyards and know the players better. But I guarantee you he knows the top 50 prospects. And I wouldn't want to be a scout when Steve says, yeah, we're going to do this. I don't think anybody stands up and says, Steve, I think you're wrong on that. You know, I can't imagine in that first round. I mean, look at his history in that first round with, you know, even with going back to Tampa and, you know, picking Vasilevsky. Like that was an Yzerman pick. And then he did this year. He took a goalie. He moved up in the draft or last year and took Sebastian Kosa. And what's interesting about that is, if you don't remember, Jesperi Wallstedt was the number 1 ranked goalie, and everybody thought he might go. He could move up into the 10 and all that. He didn't go in the top 10, but the Red Wings took Kosa, not him, at 15, and that was an Yzerman pick. So. Right.
Hey, how about a little bit of the? I was expecting this, Luke Richardson getting hired by Chicago as their head coach. Not that he's not qualified; he's a great player. But it just surprised me. I've never really heard his name thrown around.
Well, his name is circulated in several coaching searches for the last 4 or 5 years. The timing wasn't right in the past. I don't remember what it was, but he had a family issue.
Lost his daughter. Lost his daughter, I think, yeah.
Is that what it was? Okay. Yeah. I knew it was something and it was bad. But the timing wasn't right. But he's been highly respected. People think the world of him as an assistant. It was sort of a matter of time. But I was still surprised he got that, only because it sure felt like they were going to keep the incumbent Derek King, the interim coach. So I thought they were going to keep him. So I was surprised, but he must have just wowed them in the interview process. Sure. And here we go. So he's
who still needs a coach then? So Winnipeg needs a coach. Red Wings need a coach.
Winnipeg, Red Wings, and Boston.
Right. Interesting. So Quinn goes to Boston, former Ranger coach. What do you think?
Yeah, people are saying Leach as well. Jay Leach.
He's been around a long time, yeah.
Well, and he was the Providence coach years ago. He's an assistant now in St. Louis. Right. But I've heard his name mentioned as well.
Right. And then who gets the job in Winnipeg then?
Scott Arniel, maybe.
I know he was getting an interview for it. I've heard a couple of different stories. One was squashed. I heard a rumor at first that whoever went in there as coach was going to have to accept Arniel as an associate coach. I've later heard that from people close to Arniel that was not true. So, but yeah, I know.
Arniel, I guess, would be a good choice there. They're looking at some assistant coaches as well. Right. I think so.
Right. Well, how about Detroit? What do you think is going to happen in Detroit?
And it's just a guess because you don't get information out of the Steve Yzerman regime. But I would guess he's looking at one of the Tampa Bay assistants. He knows those guys well. He hired both Halpern and Derek Lalonde in 2018 when he was still in. So and they're an interesting contrast. Like Lalonde has the greater experience. He's been a head coach in the East Coast Hockey League, in the United States Hockey League, in the American Hockey League. And Halpern's just been an assistant coach in the NHL. But Halpern played and was a highly respected role player for a lot of years. I would think a guy like Steve Yzerman would value that. But I also think Steve Yzerman values coaching experience, so head coaching.
Yeah, it certainly takes a different personality to be that head coach, right? I mean, you got to have a commanding presence. I've talked to a few guys. James Patrick and I are pretty close, and him coaching up there in Winnipeg, and that's one of the things he says. Like with Lindy Ruff, he coached with for a long time. Just his presence. I mean, a lot of people know the game, the systems, and all that kind of stuff, but it's being able to command even more so now because it's less of the just telling guys what to do, and it's more understanding what they want and their egos and everything. Not that there was the egos back when I played, but it's a different way of coaching now. So the presence is a big thing.
This is just absolutely nuts because there's no basis for fact what I'm about to say. But
all right, I like it.
But I judge coaches in terms of their ability to maintain an even keel by how they deal with the media. Yeah. And I think that would translate to what's going on on the bench. And I like Rod Brendan Moore and Cassidy, and because you can ask those guys anything, and they're unflappable. Like you can ask, and the same would be true of Lindy Ruff. I remember he'd get asked every day about injuries, and he would just smile, and he said, "Don't you know?" He says, "Oh," he says, "I could tell you, but I won't." Or or if I did tell you, then I'd have to kill you. Those kind of things. And you know what? He just has a little fun with it.
Yeah.
But he knows it's your job. He doesn't. He respects the fact that you keep doing it. It doesn't bug him. And the same thing with Brind'Amour and Cassidy. You can ask them everything, and they're not going to give away state secrets, but they're not bothered by it. And I think that translates on the bench for them. I think they're unflappable.
How about John Cooper? I was impressed by John Cooper too.
John Cooper is just terrific, and I think it helped him that he was a lawyer in his previous life. He's an excellent communicator. He understands. He reads people very well. He has got a great sense of humor. I mean, the fact that he's friends with Charles Barkley, just says it all.
He's got a long list of celebrity friends, doesn't he? Hasn't got a whole bunch
he does. And, he maintains those friendships because he works at them. Yeah. There are a lot of people who say, well, I know this guy and I know that guy. Yeah. But you work at the friendship. Well, John Cooper does. I know for a fact, because I have also engaged with Charles Barkley, know for a fact that he and John Cooper, text regularly, that there's, exchanges. Sir Charles is a huge hockey fan.
Yeah,
a huge hockey fan. I did for 2 consecutive years during the Cup Finals. I did, got his thoughts on the final. He loves it. Like even while he's doing NBA games, he always says between periods, turn on the hockey game. I got to know what's going on. So,
wow, very cool.
Yeah, he's into that. But I appreciate the fact, and I do think that also the fact that he worked his way up all the way from United States Hockey League also.
Yeah. Did he start coaching like a Bantam team or something at first?
Yeah, it was somebody asked him, he had a good kid that was playing, and he said, John, can you come over and coach this team? He knew he had played and all that kind of stuff. But he, I just think he does a really good job. And I was reading a story about Derek Lalonde. I wanted to know more about him. And they told a funny story about, he's known as the buffer between Cooper and the players that, you can, and he's a funny guy. Derek Lalonde is a funny guy. Oh. And so Cooper got on the COVID protocol list and couldn't coach. And so Derek Lalonde became the interim or, substitute head coach. And they were getting hammered by somebody in the first period. They're being outshot. And Cooper put on social media, hey, Derek, I guess the players don't like you after all.
That's funny.
Well, you can get away with that when you're John Cooper because Derek understands that John's just kidding with him. I think he's confident in his relationship with Cooper. I think Cooper knows that all the players would laugh at that as well. He's got a good ability to read the audience.
Yeah. I was impressed too when they lost that game in overtime that he claimed they had too many men on the ice. He was so, and I thought it was genuine. He was so emotional, not because they lost the game as much, but he felt bad for his players that they had worked so hard and fought so hard. I was really impressed the way he handled himself for that too. That was good.
Well, I thought it was interesting that Steven Stamkos said this run was maybe more memorable, even though they lost because of the adversity. Like their list of injuries, honestly, people are way too hard. Like when they announced what their injuries were, some people said, well, here comes the excuses. It wasn't excuses. They're just being transparent.
Yeah.
They don't tell us what the injuries are. And so now the reporters really want to know, okay, who was really hurt because it's a story. And so they told us. And so, now fans say, oh, they're making excuses. Well, they're not. Trust me. They're not making excuses. Yeah. They're just giving information just so people know.
Totally. I agree with you 100%. Yeah, some of the things that NHL players listen. Maybe there's the odd case where a guy doesn't fight through an injury, but the stuff like you think back to Patrice Bergeron playing in the playoffs sometimes with punctured lung and all this broken ribs and all those kinds of stuff. I tell you, the things that NHL players do, particularly playing in the playoffs all the time to play, they play through a lot of injuries. So, yep, real deal.
Yeah, they sure do. So. Yeah, and transparency, of course. This is the 21st century. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
We talk about it all the time. And when I first started out voting on awards, it was all secret ballot, and over time, there was more of the people who were voting wanted to be transparent. That some of the people object to what goes on with the Hall of Fame because we don't have any idea how people vote. Well, mostly people want to know because they want to know who to blame. That's the thing. But when you're transparent, at least it gives the perception that everything is above board, that there's no politics involved, because you're standing up for who you vote for. But
yeah, very true.
And
I guess in the gambling world being such a big thing now too, like the disclosure of injuries is a big deal, right?
Yeah, it is. The funny thing about injuries and gambling, and just I've dabbled a little bit in writing about that. Mm-hmm. The people, casinos and the bookies, they could care less who's hurt. So listen, but they want them disclosed because the people doing the betting care.
Right.
They're setting odds based on mathematics, on the take, and all that kind of stuff. They're not, injuries or less. But the people laying down the bets think it really matters. So they're really, and I predict that they're going to push the NHL on this, because the handle on for hockey has been multi-millions, but it hasn't been as much as they hoped it would be. Really? Talking about the gambling industry, because hockey is a hard thing to bet because of the empty net goals. Yeah, and that's why the spread is usually a goal and a half. They often just favor home teams. I mean, it's just messy. I've talked to some people who are bettors who just say, I just stay away from hockey, because it could be a 3-1 game, and then suddenly it's 5-1, or it could be 2-1, and then it's 4-1. Because 2 empty net goals, and he said it's just hard, and there's so much parity. They say, like you can't figure it out. So, so it'd be interesting. But bettors do care. Bettors want to know who's injured and what the extent of the injury is. So, that's why I think the gambling industry will at some point push the NHL, because there's full disclosure. I mean, an NBA team was fined this year for either lying or non-disclosing. I can't remember, but and in the NFL, you can't be more obvious than.
Right. And the old theory used to be that you didn't want to tell what the injury was specifically because somebody would go after it, like it was a broken foot or something. Somebody tried to slash him in the foot. I don't think that really happens as much anymore. Anyways,
not as much, but the NFL has said about that as well. Yeah, but if and the bettors know, the officials know, and at least then we've got an idea of what to look for, and you can try to protect the player. So
interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, well, we appreciate everyone tuning in. We'll be back, obviously, next week to talk more hockey. A lot of stuff going on. We're marching toward the draft. I think we're going to have a lot of action at the draft, and we could see, some pretty prominent players move, perhaps, and maybe some draft rights. I mean, if you don't think you're going to sign Philip Forsberg, re-sign him in Nashville, would they trade his rights? Maybe. So we'll see. But anyway, if you want to read me, I'm at DetroitHockeyNow.com and also HockeyBuzz.com.
And if you want to listen to the radio version of the show, you can go to radio.co at 365 Sports. Everybody have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.